Item 2.1, I will call the Paris Union High School District Special Board Meeting to order at 4:01 p.m. I will conduct a roll call to determine whether we have a quorum is present. Trustee Campos.
Here.
Trustee Hall.
Here.
Trustee Stafford.
Here.
Trustee Anaya. Trustee Anaya. She said she was running late. Trustee Garcia, present. We've established a quorum. Item 3.1, revision, adoption, ordering of agenda, May 28, 2026. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Trustee Hall? Thank you. Is there a
Second.
second? Trustee Stafford? Any discussion? See none, please vote. Item 3.1 passes, 4 yes and 1 absent. Item 4.1, invitation to address the Board of Trustees. Are there any public comments?
No public comments.
Thank you. Item 5.1, Board Policy Series 4000, consideration, discussion, or revision of Board Policy 4111, recruitment and selection. Is there any discussion? Oh, yes, sir.
That's my cue. Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to be here in person. I understand that this is a long-tabled topic regarding the hiring of employees and the board's involvement and the number of individuals that the board is seeking to have brought as far as recommendations from the superintendent for hiring consideration. So my job here today is because we're in open session, is I'm going to give you information that I've gleaned over the 26 years of practice that I've done and allow you to take that information and use it as you wish. My job isn't to make the decision for you, but I want to just make sure that you're able to make informed decisions and you understand the potential legal concerns and or what's happening around the state as it relates to this. You can certainly answer any questions once I've shared. And if there's a different method that you would like to utilize, I'm certainly happy to handle this however you would like. But just at a high level, to start with, most districts in the state that I've worked with, in fact, all of the districts that I've ever worked with, all empower the superintendent to bring one recommendation for hiring. And typically, those types of decisions where there's formal board action are more at the management level versus hiring lower level classified employees, teachers, etc. Those students where they're done through a consent agenda item. And so when you will look at your board policy 4111, in most districts they follow the CSBA guidance, which is that there is one person that the superintendent brings as far as the recommendation for the board's consideration. Just some thoughts that I put together to share with everybody is, one, while each of you probably, when you went to your training, learned about the immunity that you have for most of the decisions you make, as you delve into making more granular level decisions, right, where you step out of your overall role of governance into getting more detailed information, there are situations where those decisions and how you make them can end up allowing somebody to challenge that immunity, which means just you're named as individuals in lawsuits, potentially, and it can in some cases result in not having immunity because of the decisions that are being made. One of the biggest things, and I mentioned this before, is right, I know that you've gone through board governance workshops internally, that you've attended CSBA meetings, but the overall job of the board as a general matter is oversight, right? Your governance, you're talking about the 30,000-foot view as you step into requiring multiple candidates to come in. Now we're diving down lower to the sea level, and that's pushing you back into management-related decisions versus the governance board role that you're really doing. In talking with superintendents over the years, I do know that these types of places where the superintendent feels like the board is kind of encroaching into those types of decisions, and not that the board doesn't have a right to ask questions, it takes away some of the accountability for the superintendent, right? The superintendent is the board's accrue one employee that you hire as your employee. And so that creates issues as far as what you expect of them. Like, where does their responsibility lie when it comes to a candidate? If they bring you one and they're standing behind them and says, our staff has vetted this person, we feel they're the best candidate, versus having to bring three and recommendation from the superintendent and their team that pulled everything together isn't taken into account, can take away from the accountability that the superintendent itself has. Along that same vein, it can have an impact on the trust of leadership, right? Because when the leadership feels like they're not being accountable for what their tasks are, which is the day-to-day running of the district, that impacts that. The domino effect of that, and I've seen this not necessarily on this issue, but in other places where we have seen boards become more active on things that are typically at the management level versus at the governance level, is that it becomes harder to recruit good candidates, because whether for good or bad, is we live in the day and age of TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, social media, where information gets out very quickly. And as that gets out, and if you're looking to hire a superintendent, that may be a factor in whether somebody decides to apply or not. Again, all of these things are just me thinking through what are the ramifications. They're not a right or a wrong issue. A couple of other thoughts that I did come up with is, as you bring more candidates in from a recommendation standpoint, it can lengthen the hiring process, right? Because if the superintendent brings in one candidate, we're good. If we bring in three candidates and then there's further follow-up that needs to happen, we've now elongated when we're actually going to put somebody into that position and be able to provide the support and assistance we need to, whether it's direct support to students, whether it's curriculum building, whether it's a chief business officer, whatever that role is, right? It can lengthen those processes. The other thing that I have seen happen is that as boards get more involved, if there are three candidates and they realize that the board is the individuals making the decision, we can start to see additional lobbying to the board of, hey, I'm a good candidate, versus it coming from one place. So the funnel widens versus getting narrowed. Again, these are just kind of preliminary thoughts that I had that I wanted to share. That's kind of where it is. So again, not a right or a wrong, but in my experience, over the 26 years, I've probably worked with between 50 and 60 districts, and I know there's over 1,000 in the state, so I don't know everybody. But I've worked with HR, where I've helped at county-wide meetings where we host things. This is traditionally what we do see is what you can currently have in place. Excuse me, which is the superintendent brings one recommendation. Okay. That's kind of the thought process of what I was asked to share for the board's consideration.
Any questions?
So I guess, and maybe, so this was something that when I was elected in 22, was brought to my attention in terms of how things had happened before, and I believe Tony was on those boards before, as well as Edward. So if they can explain to me, kind of, or us, the purpose behind what the original intent of that was, because that's kind of the way it all came about. And so I don't know if they can just share that as to what was going on or why was that brought forward.
Right now, it's public comments.
Oh,
That's okay.
or discussion.
No. Well, I was at saying any questions for Mr. Fisk.
Okay, I'm confused. So,
So he's the public speaker right now?
No, I'm not a public speaker.
I think
I'm
Steve
helping
wants
the
us
board.
there.
So you're
Yeah,
past
because
public
this is on-
comments.
This is
You are in your
invitation,
discussion.
for invitation to address on board, on closed session items only.
No, we moved past that. We're on the open session 411.
Oh my gosh, my bad. Okay, so we're on consideration discussion on revision of board policy 4111, recruitment and selection. And then is there any discussion? That's where you get it.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm sorry. Can you repeat one more time?
well, I guess
I can paraphrase the question if it helps.
Go ahead.
Because I'm not sure I know the answer. It sounds like at some point prior to Mr. Campos's being elected to the board, there was a process in place. And I'm not clear on what that process was, so you may want to specify that. And then there was some change, and I think he's trying to find out what was the process before, where have we morphed to, and where should we land? Is that
correct.
So I guess the question, if I'm paraphrasing, because I'm curious myself, is has the district always utilized the recommendation from CSBA, which is, I mean, not in every case, obviously there are exceptions, but as a board policy rule, that there's one candidate who's brought from the superintendent to the board for consideration? And did that change at some point?
So,
Okay. Since I've been on the board, it's been about 9 years now. The main reason we asked for that, it was a different superintendent, all different staff, none of the people here were here at the time. The process, and in no way am I talking about current, okay, was being manipulated. People were being hired as a favor, people were being transferred in positions, the superintendent was vouching for them. Months later, they pulled out of the job themselves. So, because he knew, so he had been in the district 30 years. He knew everyone. So everyone came to him, and who knows what favors he owed during that 30 years. So it was obvious the process wasn't fair. But we've changed staff, we've made all the changes to make it that way. Our last request, which we never finished, was to change the policy. 2-3 candidates to come before us. I don't see such the need for it now with the change in staff and the change. I trust what Dr. Rob will bring to the table. But it was something that, having been with the district, well, 9 as a board member and 10 working, there's a lot of things I see that I already know the answer before you finish what you're saying. But I keep my mouth shut. But in this case, I have to say there was some good old boy tactics going on, and it had to stop. And that was the reason, my reasoning, because too much manipulation. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, that was, I mean, that is what I understood. So when I came in and walked into it, I thought that the process was a good, well, did you want to add anything else, or?
no, that was
Okay. I thought the process was good because in that process in doing it, when we came to decisions for hires, we came to like a consensus. And so for me, that I thought was a good way to do it, because instead of just meeting one candidate, we were able to meet, 3 candidates in some situations, and then we were able to score them, rate them, have discussions, pros, cons, and then ultimately with a decision came out with the candidate that kind of everybody had input in. And so I kind of liked that process. And that kind of changed with the changing of the superintendent.
all right. Any more discussion? Okay, see none. Let's move on to item 6.1, invitation to address the board on closed session items only. Are there any public comments?
To provide direction too, so we need to know what
That wasn't an option here.
direction please.
So we're supposed to make that decision
There's
here?
the recommendation is to provide direction.
Well, I mean, you know what, I guess I'll add, because I just didn't realize kind of how the process was going to go. So I would like to advocate for this process, and I know that we've discussed the language, and so not being a firm 3, because what if you don't get the 3, and so obviously in the language with that, but I mean, I think the I don't want to say safety gaps, but to avoid corruption, nepotism, that kind of stuff, I think this process is a little bit more, and maybe nobody else is doing it, which is fine, but it's our prerogative to be able to do it if that's the situation, because to me, it brings us more to a consensus decision. Since then, we've had some hires that, in my opinion, it's been interesting, it's been different, and so, nothing's been consistent. So for me, it's like, this is a good way of doing it, because I believe that there's a process. You'll have the initial, when they get a pool of candidates, they can read, review, kind of sift, sort. And then when it's time for us to bring forward, and there's 3 candidates, I think us having that discussion is helpful because we can kind of narrow down, hey, we saw 3 different people, as opposed to in the past couple of years, I felt like we've been pressured, and not pressured, but by time. So we were sitting without an assistant superintendent for ed services for a while. And then so it was kind of like, okay, now we have, the one candidate, and if we don't get this candidate, it delays everything by, months again, because now if the consensus is, you know what, let's move forward with someone else, we're going to reject this one and move forward, then it's another 90-day search, we're moving on, and to see another candidate. So, and I understand the recommendation of the superintendent, which wouldn't change anything, that the recommendation could also still be there, but for me, I just feel that this process is a lot more, I don't even know what the term would be, transparent. Everybody kind of gets to see multiple candidates, multiple strengths. Understanding the need would also be kind of important for us to see kind of whose strengths are what and how they'll be able to fill that position. And then that also came up with the CBO. When our CBO left, it was kind of, again, we only have one candidate, we're under the gun to close a year, start a year. So for me, everything has been done under like a high pressure. We haven't seen a timeline. We haven't seen other candidates. Kind of like when we selected the superintendent, we saw multiple candidates. And we were able to kind of have a discussion on that. And so for me, that's why I would like to see the language changed in this. And we can change, how the language goes, but I would like to move forward with the direction of selecting a few candidates, or at least having 2 or 3, however the wording would be, so that we don't cancel out, 2 if there's only 2. So anyways, that would be kind of my position to move forward and amend the policy for board for 4111.
Thank you. Any more discussion?
No, I think it's what Mr. Campos says is pretty clear from even where I'm standpoint on the outside. It's better to see more candidates so you can get a view of what superintendent is thinking about. Totally respect everything that he brings to the table and his number 1 candidate that he would like. So I'm along with those lines as to see the 3 and just keep it where it's open to us and we can have a better discussion on who best fits that position, whether it's the person that the superintendent picks or it's mixed, it doesn't matter. So that's all.
Thank you. I think I'll add some comments myself then. Listening to the attorney's advice, I think it's dangerous and it opens the door to liability, as he explained in his comments earlier. So I personally, because they're asking for direction, I'd like to make a motion to recommend that we go with the current board policy. And if there's a change where we feel we need to have more than 1 candidate, because like he said, that's manager's level and we're governing. And I'm understanding the difference. The more he talks to us and informs us of what we're supposed to do, what we're not supposed to do, the more I'm understanding I do want to stay out of legal issues. So I'm going to make the motion
Can I
to
ask
go
a
with the
question?
recommendation.
Can I ask a question for Adam?
Sure.
Okay, so now you had mentioned earlier that the more that we, I guess, have input, it's less responsibility put on the superintendent. So, so let's just say superintendent makes a recommendation, brings us a candidate, however we feel about it, it gets passed. And then there's problems with one of the choices that they've made, and it maybe wasn't a good fit. How do we, or things happen and the superintendent doesn't handle disciplinary action or doesn't handle a certain situation from it to getting worse or whatever, and it could potentially lead to dismissal. So if something happens, then how do we hold, who do we hold accountable? The person who created the situation, the superintendent who oversees it, and it's under his watch? Or is it, do they then handle I mean, I'm confused as to kind of, I mean, I understand that, but it's like, okay, so what, so then who is ultimately held accountable if there's problems with particular hires?
Well, I think we want to be careful of how we're using responsibility and letting it stray into 6 months down the road, the employee engages in misconduct and there's discipline that may not or may be handled properly, because I think that's not a good analogy to what we're talking about, which is how many people. But the responsibility piece is more of you, when you hire the superintendent, in most superintendent contracts, and I believe it's in Dr. Alu's as well, is the day-to-day management of the district to bring recommendations for the hiring of individuals. As you step in and now say, we're not just taking your recommendation, we want to see 3, we want to vet them out ourselves. That's the responsibility that you're taking away from the superintendent, right? As the board, you have made a decision, we trust this person. We are entrusting him not only with the operation of the district, which is in and of itself very critical, but with making sure that our students and our community are receiving the educational services that we strive to provide. And so as you pull those powers away, that's where the responsibility goes away. Nothing is different regardless of whether you're getting 3 candidates and you're helping vet them or 1. If there's misconduct or other issues downstream, that's a whole separate issue. And there, yes, if things aren't being done appropriately, we figure out who is the person who didn't hold that. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the superintendent is the ultimate responsible employee of the district to ensure that all of the policies and procedures, that the uniform complaint procedures are all followed and adhered to. The board makes sure, that's your management level, right? Is you're making sure that he's doing that, and if he's not, that's when we get to go into closed session and discuss this under, either dismissal, discipline, release, because you can discipline the superintendent, or we're looking at it from an evaluative standpoint of like, we don't feel you're effectively managing, and not that it is happening here, but just, right, those are the ways you do that. But the goal is that the superintendent is on top of those things, and we don't see those things arising. Where you're getting input is the superintendent is giving you updates of like, we've had these issues, just so that you don't hear it in the newspaper or on the news if we've had this situation with an employee. But they're responsible for the day-to-day. The actual hiring decision component responsibility is less that you're pulling that decision making and they're coming forward and saying, this is the person I want. So you're diffusing or taking away some of what you have tasked them to do. So responsibility may be not the best word, maybe it's they feel a lack of trust in the process, that if I'm bringing my recommendation, you trusted me to hire me as the superintendent, trust me to bring in the right people. And I do understand the timing constraints, and oftentimes boards feel, like their hands are tied. I don't know that it changes whether you have 1 or 3 candidates, because there's generally a reason why 1 candidate is being brought to you out of 2 or 3. So if you have those 3, you're not necessarily making the process any faster, because you may have a super strong candidate that the superintendent believes in, and then 2 candidates that are not as strong. So you meet with all 3 of them, and now that takes a board meeting to happen, or 2 board meetings for everything to happen, and you decide none of these are the fit. So you still end up in the same place whether you have 1 or 3. I don't know that the 3 quickens the process. I think it can, in some cases, slow it down a bit. Yes, Mr.
So
Stafford.
if we have the 1 candidate, I'm trying to think what I want to ask you, and we decide, no, we don't want the candidate that the superintendent brings, can we just automatically go to number 2?
I would not recommend that as a policy.
To
because
consider, rather than we're saying fly it again and do all this, well, why are we doing that? We've got 3 here.
I think you can inquire if the first
Typically.
candidate is somebody you choose not to go to. I think you can ask questions about subsequent candidates and have them brought back.
Okay,
But if
and just to be clear, your advice is 1.
I think that is what we see across the board. I think it is the place that aligns with what we see as standards, with the legal responsibilities and goals of what a board member does. So that is when I work with districts, most typically that is what I'm accustomed to seeing.
Okay, so if I may, I was making a motion, and I'd like to continue with the motion. I'd like to make the motion to stay with the current board policy, and I believe it addresses most of you guys' concerns, if I'm correct. So that is my motion, and if there's a second,
I'll second.
Thank you. Any more discussion? See none? I'm gonna call for the vote. It has to be oral? Okay. Trustee Campos?
No.
Trustee Hall?
No.
Trustee Stafford?
Yes.
Trustee Anaya?
Yes.
And myself, yes. There it is. 2 nays and 3 yeses. Policy stays in place. Thank you. Okay, item 6.1, invitation to address the board on closed session items only. Are there any speakers?
No public comment.
Okay, thank you. Item 7.1, adjourn to closed session. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Trustee Stafford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Anaya. Any discussion? See none, please vote.
Closer?
Not yet. Item 7.1 is a 5-0 vote. We're going to close session, adjourning at 4:27 p.m. All right, the time is 5:06. The special board meeting is reconvening at 5:06 p.m. Item 9.1, report out of closed session. Is there a report out of closed session?
No, that's done. Proceed.
Thank you. Item 10.1, adjournment of the special meeting of the Board of Trustees for May 28, 2026. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Trustee Hall. Is there a second?
Second.
I got Stafford, I'm sorry. All right, any discussion? See none, please vote. Item 10.1 passes 5-0, and this meeting is adjourned at 5:07 p.m. Good night, everyone.